I'll introduce each one individually and ask them to just share a little bit about their organization, and then after that we'll get into some questions. So first up, I'd like to introduce Allison Paige. She's the CEO of Western Wisconsin Health.
Okay. And you want me to say a few words about who I am, where I came from? Or our organization?
Your organization.
Our organization. Yeah. Okay, Western Wisconsin Health. A lot of you probably drove by it this morning. We're located at Exit 19. We are about a $50 million organization. We employ about 350 people, about 250 FTEs. So there's a lot of people coming and going from there every day. We're totally independent, so we're not a part of any of the large systems, and that presents some challenges that we'll probably get into talking about a little bit later. Anything else?
That's good, thank you. Next up, Leah Holst, HR Manager for Frontier Ag and Turf.
Hello. Frontier Ag and Turf is a John Deere dealer. We've got 6, soon to be 7 locations. 3 here in Wisconsin, and don't hate me, but 3 plus 1 more coming in Minnesota. So we have about 160 employees, and we are challenged every day with finding qualified, trained technicians in particular with some real solid skill sets that they can use at work.
Thank you. Next up, Bill Burkhart, who is the HR Manager for Bosch Packaging Technology.
So I'm Bill Burkhart. I come from the shortest distance, so we're right next door. We have a bridge between our property and WITC, and so I think we come from the shortest distance. But Bosch has over 400,000 employees, so I think we get the largest. But Bosch Packaging Technology is a division within Bosch. Our particular unit here in New Richmond, 2 years ago, it had about 250 employees. We're down to right around 200 right now, which I think will come up in the question and answers with regard to the need for technology. But we are going through that transition that led to the reduction in the size of our company, where we are moving more from the technician level to the designer and engineer level. So we have a sort of evolution of our education and technology needs.
Thank you. And next up, Jennifer Wagner, who's a Regional Director for Pathways Wisconsin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the furthest, I think. You're the closest. Although Katie, was it Katie from Gateway? So I drove just under 5 hours this morning from St. Cloud, Wisconsin, not Minnesota. St. Cloud, Minnesota might have been closer. But I represent Pathways Wisconsin, which is the J.P. Morgan Chase New Skills for Youth. How many of you in the room are familiar with New Skills for Youth? By a show of hands. Okay. That is a 3-year project in Wisconsin to help bridge the gap with business and education to create career pathways for students that begin in K-12 that have more of a vetting process with our business and industry partners in our regions. And we're just kind of getting off the ground, but we're almost a year in, so I'll share a little bit more about that project as we go through today.
So we'll get into the questions. So the first thing I'd like you each to talk about is the reasons it's increasingly important for you to have educated and skilled workforce. That's a softball. So I'm going to start with...
I'll go ahead and start. Well, Bosch, my general manager told me not to yell. Because I have a tendency to speak loudly. But Bosch is a technology company. And like I said, it has over 400,000 employees. And their motto is technology to enhance the quality of life. And so it used to be that when I started off in the business of HR about 30 years ago, we hired with a high school diploma just to sort of validate that a person had the right of entry, that they would be able to understand the instructions we were giving them, and that they could, follow instructions, read and write, fill out time cards and things like that. That was just sort of a minimum to do the work. And as things have evolved over the years, and particularly with Bosch, which is a technology company, to be engaged with what Bosch is all about. Quality to enhance technology to enhance the quality of life. In terms of just general engagement of employees, how many just high school graduates are going to get that and be engaged and add to the momentum of the business, of where the business is about and what their key vision and values are. And so that's one element, is it's engagement, not just being able to do the work. The other part is for Bosch is the technical engagement. Like I said, our mission is technology. It's not manufacturing. And so we develop the solutions, we develop the technology, we design equipment, and we design solutions, but we don't necessarily make the equipment. We can use a supply chain to provide that. And so more and more our employees are being concentrated more into the higher technology needs. And so that, whereas it used to be, again, I think if you got an engineer or if you got a high school graduate, they could fit in one or two categories of people. And now we're looking at more the advanced degrees because just simply for engagement, if nothing else.
I'd say in healthcare, we've always needed a high level of education for the professional aspects of the healthcare organization. But it just slapped me right in the face yesterday when I was interviewing people who report to our chief financial officer. Our chief financial officer is going to be leaving us for a CEO job. And so I'm interviewing all the people who report to him. And not one of the people who reports to our chief financial officer has any education beyond high school. Now, they're all later in their careers. They are fabulous. They're fabulous people, but they learned on the job, and the technology and the complexity of healthcare finance, and especially this is all business. These are all the money people. It grew up around them. They grew with it. In no way am I going to be able to replace those people with people who aren't well educated beyond high school. So I think that's an element that the jobs have really changed, and what didn't require advanced education in the past now requires advanced education just because of the complexity.
We are in a similar situation, although a very different industry, with agriculture, and the technology in the agriculture industry is just absolutely exploding. I don't know if you guys know, but when a combine goes down the field now, the person who's sitting in the seat is not responsible for driving that combine. They don't even touch the steering wheel. This is all automated. It's all mapped through GPS, through satellites that come down. It's astounding. And these machines know exactly where they are in the field. So the technology is just a very, very critical part of what our service technicians do. I remember many years ago when I was in high school, and the people in my graduating class that went on to be a mechanic, if you will, they're the ones that were not suited for anything after high school, or just had no interest in pursuing any kind of education after that. Now, we tried that model, hiring people who could walk and talk, failed, absolutely failed. We can't maintain customer satisfaction, and without our customers, because we are direct, much kind of like in the healthcare industry, a little different, but we have to have employees who know exactly what they're doing, and it's very, very advanced. Our technicians will diagnose a piece of equipment by dialing into that combine or whatever it is out in the field on, on their iPad while they are in the shop. So they know exactly what's going on. They know what to bring when they go out to the field. So and it's going to be expanding tremendously. So we're quite concerned about where we're going to find skilled workforce.
You want to take that? So the space that Jennifer works in is that space between K-12 and higher ed, and I guess the question is, how do we make those connections and drive the kinds of skills that we're hearing about into prepping students?
That's a big question. We're working on it. So with the new skills for youth work in Pathways Wisconsin, there's 4 regions, Moraine Park and Indianhead. So I actually represent Moraine Park, but the Indianhead gentleman, we let him get on a plane and go fishing in Costa Rica this morning. So lucky him, because he's somewhere warm and beautiful, and I'll be traveling back down to, ice and snow. And then we have the Madison and the Milwaukee regions, and really what we're doing is taking the approach of bringing together all of the different business and industry education partnerships that already exist and leveraging those and making them even better, or taking them to the next step to grow them. I would say that it's not an easy task. In this role, we're learning the number of really good best practices of those business education partnerships that are out there. And then we're taking a lot of that and working with businesses and working with, K-12 and all higher ed. So the unique piece about this project is that while it's defined by technical college boundaries, it includes all of our UW partners and our private college partners, different training programs, military. It's really looking at it from a systems-wide approach to build a pathway that is commerce-led and driven by labor market information for your region. So our goal is to really make those connections with business and industry to education and all education.
So I need to share an anecdote. I can't let it pass. So a few years ago, I bought a new tractor, and something went wrong, and I didn't know what it was, so I called up Frontier, and they said, have you done the diagnostics on it? And I said, wait, I'm a metal bender. I drive a tractor on the weekend. What do you mean? And they said, oh, well, pull this panel off, plug a fuse in here, and watch the dash. Okay, I can do that. So I watch the dash, and here comes a series of codes, and the guy says, well, your ground sensor indicator is bad. We'll be out. So, what happens is the technology has moved to the point where somebody at my level, which is near zero, can, provide the diagnostics to that service person, so when they come out, they're not driving back to get the part. I mean, just an example. So, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about, so technology changes are going to drive learning and unlearning. So maybe we could address that a little bit. Go ahead.
Mark's throwing me for a loop on some of these questions. My husband owns a business, so I'm kind of a business owner. So one of the other things that we've heard from business and industry as we've been out and we've been, working with them, we hear a lot about soft skills, employability skills, and how do we help that? So when you're talking about learning and unlearning certain skills, I'm assuming that's kind of where you're going with some of that.
I'm putting a general question out there. So I would imagine in some of your areas, maybe healthcare is one, is that technology changes. There is a prescribed. Maybe you want to dig into that a little bit. There's a prescribed way that you treat or diagnose, and that changes. Mm-hmm. So we have to unlearn the old way and learn the new way.
And learn the new way. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And technology can help with that. There's a lot of education that goes on, and frankly, the world is going flat in education, as you guys know. One of the things that we've benefited from is people being able to get their midwifery degree, for example, at an online school, but do their clinicals in our building. I can't run a midwifery program, but I can partner. And we're just hiring one of those midwives who's getting out of school, and she's done her clinicals with us. So that's a way of learning. And I think we've come a long way on that, and there's just going to be more and more of that. The same thing with continuing medical education at a distance, learning technical competencies, and videoing and participating in those things makes it much, much, much easier. Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about?
Yep.
It's all right there, but it's also for patients. I mean, you look at what's going on with patient care now with technology. I've got a psychiatric nurse practitioner sitting in a chair in Baldwin, Wisconsin, providing psychiatric services to, we're not remote, to remote places in Wisconsin through the Rural Wisconsin Health Cooperative. So it's that sharing and that ability to have our collective statewide resources go further through technology. Now we have to make the money work on that, because the money doesn't exactly work on a lot of these things. It's like, well, I'll just stop with that. Is that good enough?
Thank you. Bill, how about you?
Just taking what you were saying as well as your example with regard to the tractor, that whole idea of field technology within the Bosch unit, there's something called Industry 4.0, which is basically connectivity. And so what Bosch is building into its automotive division and what we're building into the packaging is that we are connected with our customers, our equipment, with our customers' equipment that we sold them, so that we can do real-time diagnostic, not only real-time diagnostic, but within our area of packaging that we can run their packaging for. And so in terms of base skills and people's having technology, we'll always need fabricators, but Bosch may not hire them. We'll use that as part of the supply chain. And so we'll always need to support, that base technology that builds that capability within the fabricators. But within our company, it's evolving where our technicians now need to be able to understand how to connect and read diagnostics. And again, with regard to the whole company culture, we have to become very tech savvy, beyond just the social media type of stuff, more engaged in this future connectivity where suppliers, vendors like Bosch go into a company like Kraft, where I used to work for, have all the equipment connected, and they're looking at all the diagnostics and see that one machine is not acting optimal and have the wherewithal to know how to fix that. And again, that's all education. That's all education driven at a higher level than what we've been used to here locally. We've got a great relationship with WITC in the state to develop. We had 8 apprentices at one time. They were going to ITC and getting their journeyman's card through us. And so, but we're going to probably be migrating that to a little bit higher level. But somebody will need to do those apprenticeships, but just outside of Bosch.
Leah, learning and unlearning.
Learning in our industry is absolutely constant. That's one of the conversations that I have with our new hires, especially when they're just coming out of school, is to remind them that their schooling is not over. It's going to continue. One of our biggest challenges is finding enough time to provide the training that our employees need and allowing them time to do the work that they need to do, so that we can generate some income for the business. It's just absolutely steady. And so to keep our employees interested and engaged in that, I think we try to have some conversations with them about the bigger picture and the services that they're providing and getting them engaged in our customers' businesses, and also the philosophy of feeding the world. So trying to get them looking beyond just what they're doing and why they need to do it, to have them have more of a global look on why this training has to continue, and trying to keep up, quite frankly.
So that kind of opens the can of worms of lifelong learning. So maybe, Allison, do you want to add anything on lifelong learning? And
Sure. I think, I went to graduate school when I was in my 30s, and I loved going to graduate school, mostly because I had a freaking house full of children, and it was a great getaway. But it was like, I told my husband when I get home, it was like going to the airport. Everybody's on their way someplace. And I've always believed that everybody should be on their way someplace, that we are all lifelong learners. And so even yesterday when I was interviewing these staff, I'm like, okay, Lynn, you're running the business office today. What do you want to be doing? What's your goal? What do you want to be doing 5 years from now? We are all lifelong learners, and how do we as employers meet people where they are and take them where they're going? How do we get them there? How do we create the experiences for them? How do we make sure they get the education they want? How do we help them get the opportunities they want and move them up the line? I started my career in healthcare as a candy striper. I've worked in hospitals my entire life. I love healthcare, and I've gone, up the ladder with education, and I've also been very fortunate to be in a situation in my life where I could afford to get the education. Not everybody is, so I think it's got to be a partnership where we as employers can do tons to help people get where they're going with lifelong learning, tap into things. Well, there's no end to it.
Bill, any thoughts on lifelong learning?
Well, we have next door here at Bosch, 20% of our employees are 60 or older. 1/5 of our employees, of the 200 that are there now, 1/5 of them are 60 years or older. About 30% are 55 or older. So, I mean, we have a glut of people that are leaving, and I'm thinking about those folks that are what we call legacy. We're the old doughboy that we're here in town, and how they have, there's a culture there. Half of them, I would hire all over again. I can't put my finger on why one person can continue to learn and be aggressive and be passionate about new things that are coming out, and a person right next to them that looks, smells, tastes like them doesn't.
Do you want the answer to that?
Yeah, you got a clinical answer. I'm from Tennessee. We don't understand that stuff. But I think it is incumbent on the organization to allow that opportunity and to promote it. Bosch has a phenomenal developmental program, and it touches every age. And it is a thing that. But everybody's read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? That whole thing about, came out 20 years ago, that people need to change as evolution is exponential. I mean, as technology evolves exponentially. So I think the idea is out there. It's just whether somebody's getting on the bus or not. If you have an answer, I'm cool with that.
I do have an answer. You want it?
Sure.
Well, I think it all starts with who you let come in your front door. Who do you hire in the first place? Do you hire people who are here because they can breathe and they need a paycheck and you need them to do something for you? Those are extrinsically motivated people, or do you seek out and find the people who are intrinsically motivated? In healthcare, I got a little easier sell because there are people who wake up in the morning, they want to help people. It's a very mission-driven organization. But we are very purposefully selecting people who are dedicated to health and wellness. We don't weigh you when you come to work for us. We don't ask you if you smoke. We ask you to tell us about your health and wellness journey. Where are you on your health and wellness journey, and why are you going to be a good role model for health and wellness to every single person who walks in this door? How are you contributing to the organization? And we all need paychecks. I interviewed somebody a couple weeks ago and for a job, and I said, can you tell me why you want this job? Why is it the right next move for you? And she said, I want this job, and she already works for us. This was a move up. She said, I want this job because I love this organization. I love this town, and I want to make healthcare here the best that it can be. She's the credentialing person for the medical staff. She files paper. She does a ton of paperwork every day. And, of course I'm going to hire her. That's who you want. You want people who exude it. So we are actually, in our employee engagement surveys this year, we actually ask questions that help us determine who is intrinsically motivated, who's extrinsically motivated, who's just here for the paycheck, and here's who's here to make a difference in the world. And that's who we want to hire. No, so that's the answer, I think.
Jennifer, thoughts on lifelong learning?
So I would just add, that's really the beauty of a career pathway when you think about it. So in our world of K-12, we can visually show a student, and with academic and career planning starting in 6th grade, and I have a freshman next year. It's really crazy to believe. But I also have a 6th grader. And it's really neat to start working with kids at that age to start showing them all those opportunities. It's all about awareness and exposure to what is out there, and multiple entry and exit points. Sometimes I think people think there's just one path to success, and there's so many paths to success. I'll quickly share a personal story of my own with exposure and awareness. 40 years old, and I experienced a traumatic life event last year, and it led me to become an emergency medical responder. So I went back to school to become, an EMS with a local ambulance service, all because of an experience that I had last year. And I think if we can give students different experiences along the way, it creates their interest. It gets them excited about something. Never in a million years did I think I would want to be an EMS until I was exposed to it. So I think that's something that we have to remember, especially when we're working with young kids.
So Leah, what practices or policies does Frontier have or should have to help support lifelong learning or continuing education?
I'm glad you asked, because I wanted to add on this whole conversation that we're having. So I've talked a lot about our technicians in our service department, which are very specialized skills. The other departments that we have in our organization, our parts department, and in particular our sales department, and then moving into management type roles, we're taking a complete different philosophy. We are trying to find the right people, the people that share our mission, our values, our work ethic, a passion for the ag industry. We're hiring for attitude and teaching skills. So in particular, this group of people I typically find out of the four-year colleges. And I just talked to a young man this morning that I had met at a mock interview, and he said, well, I looked on your website and I don't know what to apply for. I said, don't worry about that. Write a cover letter, tell me about yourself, why you want to work for our company. We'll find a place for you, and we're gonna train you, and we're gonna give you exposure in all the different areas of our organization and help you find what you want to do and what you're going to do best. And we're going to partner with you to help you be successful. So I'm hoping that if we take those strategies, that we're going to get away from the people who are just coming to work for us simply for a paycheck. Because if that's the only reason they're working for us, somebody else down the street is going to offer them another 25 cents an hour or something. We need them engaged in what we do and really appealing to their value system so that they feel really good about what they're doing and making a difference in the world. So we're kind of changing our whole strategy and looking at training them across the organization. What better employee do you get then? So it's very similar to what you were talking about, Allison. What do you want to do? What will you do best, and how can we help you get there?
Thank you.
Check back with me in a year or so, and we'll see how that's all going.
So Allison, policies, practices that encourage lifelong learning.
For lifelong learning, well, we always would want to do more. So I was just adding up the quick math in my head, and we probably, between our physicians, because most of our physicians are directly employed, and our staff and the mandatory training we have to do, we're hitting $500,000 a year, easy, into education. We have in tuition, like a lot of your organizations, I'm sure, we do tuition reimbursement. We try to help people get to the next level. It's though a lot, I've been with this organization for 9 years, and when I arrived there was one, maybe two RNs in the building, probably 40 nurses who had a bachelor's degree. That's pretty low. And now I'm going to bet probably at least over a third do. We work with the technical schools a lot, but it gets back to, and we don't have a lot of money. We can't spend a ton of money in our healthcare organization. But we started with managers. When you do the annual evaluation with each employee, add this question on. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do next? What's your plan? Many of our employees come from families where people didn't go to college. Their parents didn't go to college. Their parents might not have education, and we can be that, or we can be that person in their life that says, yes, you can. What do you want to do? How can I help you get there? So we'll help them along the way, take a medical assistant in the clinic, help them apply to the school, help them pay for it. Be accommodating in their work schedule if they need to take classes this day or that day so that they can go back to school and help them. So it's not just taking the people who are already well educated and how do we continue their education, like the doctors and the nurses and the pharmacists. It's really taking people as they walk in your door and how do we help them get to better and better places in their life, or better jobs. So we have lots of policies to do that. I think the tuition reimbursement is a big one, but it's beyond that, it's really the attitude of the organization. I'm not hiring you because I hope you stay in housekeeping your whole life. I'm hiring you because I think you got potential. And I think you're on board with our mission. And if you want to be a house, or the maintenance guy in the building forever, awesome. That's great. We're gonna treasure you just that way. But you know what? If you want my job, I'm gonna help you get there. I have just one quick example. We have a young lady who works for us. And she came to us first as a phlebotomist. That's not a lot of education. I don't know how much, you guys probably train them for us. It's not a lot of education. She came as a phlebotomist. She got her bachelor's degree partially online, and I think partially through UW River Falls. Got her bachelor's degree, and now she was still working for us in the lab, just as a phlebotomist, not making very much money at all. Smart young lady. We're planning for a new building. We brought her on to help us with just organizing and coordinating all the equipment that had to be purchased. Then she organized and helped coordinate the move. Moving a hospital is a tricky deal. Helped us with that. She's now getting her master's degree at St. Kate's. She wants to be a chief financial officer. She wants to be our chief financial officer. She's not quite ready. And so as we rearranged the org chart, we gave her some operational accountability with seasoned managers who were, so we're creating the environment where she can move up, and probably before I'm dead and gone, Amy Jo will be the CFO at Western Wisconsin Health. And we're trying to make that happen, and we want to be almost overt about it so people know. I go into the managers and I say, I'm trying to create an opportunity for so-and-so here. Would you be okay with that? She has no management experience. Would you be okay with her managing you so she can learn how to be a good operational manager? And we're small enough, there's not a lot of rules, so we can just make those kinds of things happen. And so I think it's a combination of organizational policies, but also the practice of learning. It's a stark difference. The first year I was there, I was like, whoa, okay, well, we need to get people thinking about advancing, thinking about educating themselves. So I offered a bunch of brown bag lunches just on topics. And then when people got certifications and people got credentials, I made a big deal about it in the lunchroom. And I put up, hey, look who got certified in X. I had the director of patient care come into my office, close the door, and say, you need to take those down. And I said, why would I take them down? She said, you're making people feel bad who don't have those credentials. And I said, well, we're going to honor achievement in this building, and we're going to honor achievement. And guess what's happened? More and more people have gone back to school. More and more people they're out there looking for the next thing to do. So it's that culture, it's the practices and the policies all wrapped up.
Bill, practices and policies?
Well, one thing that kept coming to my mind is I used to work for Kraft for some years, about 8 years. And at that time, they actually, and I don't really condone this so much because, again, getting into intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations, but they actually had bonuses based upon development. So you had objectives, part of you had your merit increase, and then you had a bonus. And your bonus had two components. One was performance against clear objectives, but the second one was developmental objectives. And so I think people will develop, that brought some people to develop that they didn't really want to. But what the big thing was is that it sent a message that Kraft really wanted development because they put money where their mouth was. Again, I don't like to get into bonuses that type of way. But, just like Allison was saying, we have a lot of programs that touch a person throughout their entire career that allow them to develop professionally. You know, when you hire somebody, you hire the whole person. You just don't hire them from 8 to 5 or whatever. And so, you know, the wellness type of things where you engage them and be more holistic toward them. And if they need to show a little bit of passion, if you will, about their well-being and growing, if they're unhealthy, becoming healthier, if their parents becoming better parents, if they're swimmers becoming better swimmers. And so I think a lot of it's driven by that cultural. It has to be, you know, substantiated with clear programs, and we have developmental objectives as part of our annual merit plan. And tuition reimbursement, and we have certificates that we would pay people to go get, and so we put our money where our mouth is. But again, I go back to these people, like you said, hire the people that intrinsically want to learn and are passionate about what they're doing. Again, I look at these guys that are getting ready to retire, and some of them, just because they stay so relevant with what's going on, despite them having worked there for 40 years, they're as relevant today as they were in their 30s. And what is that element? You know, if I could pick that out in an interview, that it sort of comes down to individual choice to develop. But I think all companies are you know, throw the developmental opportunities and training monies and everything at folks. But it's nice when you have a leader that is passionate about it. That's why I was saying at Kraft, the leaders were very passionate about it, and their systems spoke to that. You just want to develop that culture and that internal engine of development. But we do at every level, whether it's a technician or an engineer or a manager. We have talent pools that you get nominated into and go through prescribed courses. We have a computer-based competency management program. So during the year in evaluation, if you have objectives to achieve this during the next year and there's a gap in your competency to achieve that, there is a method to identify the training method to close that gap so you can achieve that goal. I mean, very mechanical, very good. It's over-engineered. It's bosh. But still, it comes down to that individual characteristic. So I think, you know, as friends, as neighbors, as parents, and everything else, you know, drive that as well. You know, I have 2 boys just graduated high school, and driving that. So that's all.
Okay. Thank you. Jennifer, any thoughts?
Can you repeat your question? I got a little confused as to where we were going here.
So what are the, you know, what policies and practices are needed to help facilitate working together or lifelong learning?
Okay, think about that for a minute. I would say that in my role now, it's created this kind of new vision. I had previously worked at Moraine Park for almost 15 years, and now I've seen things from a much higher level, from a state level, and I'm exposed to the tech college and the UW and the private colleges and all the state agencies. And I'm excited because I see everyone working together much better, you know, coming together and talking, and really the most important thing to remember in all of it is the student. You know, to set aside maybe things that have happened in the past, or to, you know, not be so protective of your programs and the things that you've done, but to create opportunities for students. Because really our goal is to create access for students. Now that's one of the main ideas behind the Pathways Wisconsin, the JP Morgan Chase funds, is creating access and opportunities for all students, you know, especially underserved populations. And making sure that all students have a chance to participate in youth apprenticeship, work-based learning, dual credit opportunities. And I think by everyone working together at a state level, we're helping to definitely bridge that gap.
So it's a rare opportunity to have the presidents of the independent colleges, the university system, and the technical colleges here, and we've got a lot of representation from DPI here as well. If you're going to say, do this, what is your message to higher education in Wisconsin? What is your do this?
I'll start.
You'll start. It sounds like.
I think what I would like to see more is take advantage of us. There is nothing more than I like to do than to come out to schools and talk to students who are prospective employees. Let us share. You guys don't need to be experts. It's hard enough for us to be experts in our industries that are changing and growing and evolving. So call on the employers in your communities to come in and speak and make a connection with those students. And it literally is a connection. Again, I think I earlier made reference to I had gone to UW River Falls to do mock interviews. And one of those students that I did a mock interview is the one that called me and said, hey, you said you would help me, so what do you think? That's probably going to lead us to a really, really good employee. But if the colleges would call on us to come and be your resident experts, I think there would be some really good learning opportunities there. So that's my request. Just take advantage of us.
Alan?
I want to go next because I want to ditto that. I would sit there and take it just a little nuance to that, not any further, but a nuance of that is come to us too. Not only we go to you, but get involved, have the teachers, the instructors, have the leaders, the educators, and so forth visit us where we work. And the students job shadow, we're more than willing to, to do all those things. And there's a lot to learn. You think back to the days when you were being educated, how life was so different when you went to work. And so to give the associate, give the student that opportunity, but those that are designing the education, for us, come to where we work, spend a day, go to meetings. There's proprietary stuff, and we can deal with that. But come see what it's actually like to work in our environment so you can sort of use your expertise to design what's best for the students to be prepared.
Allison?
I guess if I had something to say to all of the educators at all levels in the room, it would be thank you. We have fabulous working relationships. I'm looking at Baldwin-Woodville School District back here. We got all kinds of cool stuff going on with the school districts back and forth. We provide services to them, and they provide lots of stuff for us. The students are back and forth. We have students in and out of our facility constantly at all levels, learning and exploring, I would say, when they're in the K-12, and then learning when they're at the tech school or at the universities. We do all kinds of medical residencies, nurse practitioners, all that. So I think that we are doing a great job interfacing between the healthcare businesses in the region and the educational. We're always, lots of days people are in the schools, or they're at the WITC, or they're here, or they're there. But one last thought, I would say, can you work them hard? Work them hard. Make them learn a lot. It'll make them learn the basics. And before they leave your doors, teach them the difference between I and me and good and well. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
So this isn't on the script, but I'm going to ask Ray to address your concern. And that is, one of your initiatives is getting people into companies and internships and so on. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I do believe that, as Bill mentioned, and as Leah mentioned, that universities are too far removed from workplace, the business workplace, and that's an even bigger problem today than it was 25, 30 years ago, because the pace of change is so fast. When I'm an old John Deere guy, so I appreciate it.
I knew I liked you.
Where's Sheila? She's a red person. She's not a person.
She laughed.
But the changes that are taking place, I used to work for General Motors, and I know what you're going through with Bosch and all the divisions of Bosch. This whole change is boom, 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 boom. And we're not changing as fast. So the university, I think the technical colleges, and I was a tech college president, tech colleges are much more closely aligned for a good reason. I understand that. But we're getting too far removed from the workplace, and that's something that is really scary to me. It shouldn't be. It's quite all right to be in the ivory tower and study your navel, but if that's all you ever do, the world may come to an end. So.
Morna, I'd like you to address the industry groups that advise all of our programs in the tech colleges.
Great, because I love talking about this. So for those in the room that don't know, technical college programs, every one of them at every college has its own advisory committee of employers and faculty who make decisions about our programming. I mean, it's true, Ray mentioned, we are a bit different in our structure and delivery models, but technical college programs are changing pretty much every year. Not necessarily, we don't do a complete overhaul of our programs, but we change maybe how we deliver it, how much of it is done online versus not. Is a traditional associate degree program the right program? Or is it something that we could do in a stackable credential, so 1 year at a time, or maybe 6 months at a time? We make those changes based on input from employers and what you need to hire. What's going to make our students and our graduates have that advantage once they go into your interview rooms and look for employment. And I think that the thing that I'm most asking of employers these days, because you've done a tremendous job of engaging with us in those advisory committees and in a lot of other ways, as you mentioned, Allison, but in order to build true pathways, career pathways, lifelong learning, we're going to make lots of changes on our end, but with that comes changes on the employer end. So you guys, I think, are model employees. I was going to ask Jennifer a question about how does she replicate the three of you in all her work statewide. But this idea that when you do encourage someone to get further development, when you do encourage someone to go back, is there a connection to that new credential back in the workplace? Do they actually get a new opportunity? Do they get an increase in pay? Do they get access to other professional development opportunities, or is it just a one-off? Because truthfully, employees and prospective employees of any age, we all know this, if any of you are parents, you know it, it's not just about the opportunity you're offering them at this moment, but it's what they're going to get to do and see and where they're going to get to go 5 years from now. Honestly, that is the only way that we are going to keep them here in our state. There's lots of other states with better weather and with, you know, these imaginary paths of opportunity. We have real paths here, and we just need to make sure that they are communicated and that we make good on those promises. So you guys are really inspirational for us, but I'm hoping you'll encourage your colleagues in your industry sectors to follow suit, because that's how we're going to keep folks going through this cycle of education and then increased employment and make things better for all of us.
Okay.
Can I take on to her comments of I'm not just doing this because I'm nice. I'm doing this because it differentiates us. It differentiates us. I want, like you've seen the McDonald's, I used to work for McDonald's, America's first best job, or best first job, or is it them or Starbucks? McDonald's, I think. America's best first job. And why not? I think that the fact that I've been able to get our current CFO the skills he needs and the experiences he needs to become a CEO just makes me a more attractive employer for the next person coming up the pike. So it really differentiates. I know we might talk about family-friendly workplace, we might not have time, but that's about kind of amenities and perks and benefits and flexibility and stuff like that. I think the real difference you make is when you start to look at opportunity and inspiration with people and creating that then you become kind of a more of a magnet organization. So it's a business strategy, not just benefiting the world.
Thank you, Allison. So one of the things that we haven't heard today is liberal arts. And sometimes I think liberal arts has been beat up a little bit. And yet we've got companies out there that are really driving incredibly strong business models, primarily staffing with liberal arts graduates. And so for those of you, and this may not be fair, but I'm going to say it, I didn't know what WITC was until I got involved at the state level. And so WITC is all of our independent colleges, nonprofit colleges in the state. And most of them, I think, are liberal arts institutions or integrated, not all. But I'd like to hear a little bit about liberal arts and its importance in this process.
How long do I have? No. I think that there is more appreciation of the liberal arts than you might know. It's just the way you characterize it if you understand what it is. There's been a survey over the last several years by Hart and Associates that shows what corporate CEOs want in employees are. I mentioned these before: critical thinking, communication skills, creativity, ability to collaborate, and character. And good grammar, I'd point out.
And good grammar.
And good grammar. That's what the liberal arts deliver, and it isn't just found at liberal arts colleges. That it's found through all colleges and universities. That's part of a truly educated person. It isn't just knowing technique, it's knowing how to apply it. And I think that's just focusing for a minute on the last one, on character. At the time of 9/11, there was an academic, not from Wisconsin, of course, who was quoted as saying that the terrorists were just as educated as the rest of us. And I think that's ridiculous. Part of character development means also moral development, and that is what you get as part of a quality education. I'd say one more thing about, now that I've got the mic, I've got my death grip on it. One more thing about independent colleges and universities. We are not subsidized by the state taxpayers. We have to respond to the marketplace, or we won't have students, we won't have donors. And I think that creates a degree of flexibility that we have that's different. It's not necessarily better, but it's different. To give you one example, the state has had a shortage of pharmacists, and UW-Madison said they had the only pharmacy school and said they were unable to expand. So Concordia University in Mequon, in just a matter of a few years, raised the money, hired the faculty, built a building, and have now graduated several classes of pharmacists. Still more to be done. Now the Medical College of Wisconsin, another of my members, is adding a pharmacy program. So we live and die by being responsive. So call us. We won't talk as much as I do, but we will do.
Thank you. I'm going, for the facilitators, I'm going to cut my comments short because most of my comments are going to repeat what's already been said today. So we've got a little time for some questions. So Ray, you had a question?
One of the ways you could help us is revealed in this statement. It takes us 4 or 5 years to change a curriculum and alter what we do. So we need to have an idea of where you want to be in 5 or 6 years or a decade. And given the rapid pace of change in each of your fields, strategically, when I talk to a lot of small businesses, when I used to do a lot of consulting, it was hard for them to express with any clarity where they wanted to be in the next decade. That makes it difficult for us to make changes. So how would you succinctly describe where you want to be in 5 or 6 years or the next decade in ways that might give us help as to what we should be doing?
Who would like that one?
Where we want to be as an industry,
As an organization, where do you?
as an organization. Wow.
Well, I'll answer it from my perspective. So we're a traditional contract manufacturer, and what we're finding is that the lack of access to skilled folks are pushing us to automation. And so what's happening is the bar continues to go up. We're moving from operators to technicians, from technicians to engineers. And the other thing that's happening is the world is getting smaller. And so now we're not just having to deal with US standards, but European standards and Chinese standards. And we need to be fluent, not only in language, but in culture, which we're not. So that's a challenge. So make us culturally competent and provide us avenues to access the rapid, you mentioned it, Industry 4.0, the ability to adapt to those changes. So that's a tall order, but Allison, go for it.
I can tell you one thing, because the UW system produces a lot of the healthcare professionals, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, you name it. I would like to see the mission change to, instead of we produce fabulous doctors, nurses, pharmacists, whatever, that we produce fabulous teams that incorporate a lot of the things you're talking about communication, those problem-solving, decision-making, getting along as a team. Most of the bad things that happen in healthcare happen because of lack of communication and lack of teamwork. And so producing those teams that come out ready to hit the ground running as teams instead of competent individuals.
Any others? Any other questions? If not, I want to thank the panel very much. We really appreciate your participation. Please take your cups, because if you don't, my wife has told me no more cups.